Okay, the next, I'm sorry. Do you want to go ahead? The next document we have is,
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Mayor,
Mr. Johnson.
Mayor, before you continue on. Like with Rita, is there any way for them to let us know that the amount less represents less people who actually are filing? Or is it less collection of people who filed and then haven't paid?
that's under review. I've asked them to give me a detail versus just saying that it's less collection. I'm waiting for them to tell me. The initial response was that there was a couple corporations that had paid and maybe overestimated their taxes last year when they were paying them. And then this year, they asked for their refund back, you know, when they filed their taxes. So that would affect the adjustment. But I did ask specific by names, not so much by individual, but by these large companies. I like to know who, you know, on their records overpaid, and ask for a refund to impact this number. So I'm waiting for some information back, some more detailed information to reconcile the $200,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, the revenue statement is the next one, and basically this report, it rolls up, you know, to the receipts is on that summary. You know, the first column is the budget that we submitted. The next column is the month-to-date revenue, and then, of course, you have year-to-date, and then what's left to be collected for the rest of the year. So this is basically how you read it. And then the last column, they say the 43% is collected. And one of the key numbers that you can see, if you notice right above it, it says target percent, 33%. That's because we're 1/3 through the year as of April. So anything that we collected above that is really good. But again, the property taxes, you know, like I say, that number is sort of not distorted, but remember they're giving us advances, so it's not like on like a 1/12 number per se. But as you go down and read this, and you probably, you know, can read it at your leisure. And what I plan to do next month is to give it to you before the meeting so that you can have questions. And then after, you know, you take this and read, you have questions, you can call me back. Or basically send me an email, I prefer an email, if you have questions about these documents. But I'll try to get them out prior to the meeting so you have time to peruse them. But this is basically how you read this. So the percent collected, and like I say, the target is 33% because we're 1/3 through the year. So as you go down and peruse, you know, and you get to the last page, you can see, it doesn't do it in terms of total, but like the 12 million is pretty much on target, because 1/3 is pretty much like the 6 million, and that's basically what we're showing that we collected. So we're pretty, you know, close to budget, what we plan to receive.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Adams.
question for Irene.
Yes. Proceed.
Irene, you said you're gonna give us these reports earlier. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so you have time to go through and formulate your questions, you know, to help you, because, I mean, at this point, and I do understand, it's difficult, you know, to sit here and try to, for you to encompass all of this and to ask questions. So like I said, if you want to send me an email about anything specific you have, and you take this home. But in the future, I will, you know, try to get them to you at least a couple of days or so. Because I think we're scheduled pretty much to meet the third Mondays of the month, so I'll try to give them to you like that Friday or Thursday, you know, time permits.
Yes, Mr.
Are
Adams.
you gonna post this on our website?
I'm not gonna post this. This is what I need to do. I went out trying to see exactly what was posted, because I want to post the same information. I prefer, if it's okay with this body, not to post this, because as I said, there's a lot of adjustments to need. The next statement will be cleaner, And, you know, we'll have some more factual figures, because just to post this without all these adjustments that I talked about, I think it wouldn't do the city any good personally. But I also, and I will go out on the website again to see whether you're posting exactly which reports, so that we can post the same reports.
Thank you.
As a suggestion regarding sharing the information on the website with the residents and with others, possibly adding a visual, like a pie chart, and then breaking down the different funds and showing a comparison between the current year and previous fiscal years.
And that was my intent. You may or may not know that we had our new computers installed, and we're still debugging it. And I tried, actually yesterday, to try to do a bar graph just to see if there's some issues that I still have to go back to iTech to get resolved in terms of the new software package that we have installed. Okay, and then the expense basically is the same. Like I say, these numbers roll up to the summary sheet that we had talked about. And like I said, there will be adjustments based on the adjustments that I talked about with the encumbrances and what have you. So that will change some of these numbers. And that's why I say that the next report, when we close out all these expenses, encumbrances from the prior year. Because if you notice, you know, the first column, they will include prior year encumbrances and all, so. But I guess the other question I have too, are these reports sufficient for your review? Or, I mean, in terms of the expense revenue, I mean, do they give you enough detail? Because this is how they come off, you know, by category, by object on the computer. And any other reports as the invoice agent and all of that. It's not necessarily like an agent report, but it's a status report, they call it, so you can look at the dates of the invoices on there, you know, to discern what's the time limit on them. But it's not called an agent report. We don't have such a report in the system. It's an invoice status, so you'll be able to see all the invoices outstanding.
So you would be able to produce a monthly report to show the revenue that the city's collected and its total amount for us?
Well, yeah, that's shown on this report. The first report was the monies, the revenue.
Well, I guess maybe make it more specific in terms of like our different vendors and so forth, not like just the different funds.
That would be commerce. I mean, what I could do is print a check register that shows every check that was written. But I don't see what I can find.
Okay.
So if you'll send me a list of what you need, I can tell you, you know, or you have them customize some reports for us or whatever.
You said it's not called the aging report?
No, it's not called aging report as we know it in general accounting. It's an invoice status report. It's basically all the invoices that's outstanding. But I mean, it has the date, so you know, it's easy to go through, and it's in date order. So you can easily see, you know, like if the invoice was dated January, February, March, and, but it doesn't just say 60 days, 30 days,
Okay.
like that.
Yeah, because I'm used to looking at the
I understand,
aging
and I am
report.
too, I mean, in private accounting, but in
Now, what is
this,
it called? Invoice what?
it's an invoice status report.
Okay.
So where we list all the invoices. And just keep in mind, and please be mindful that, you know, there's a lot of paper we try to conserve on our supplies. So maybe what I'll do is try to scan these to you and you can print them off yourself. The same on our supplies.
We have that many outstanding?
No, I'm just talking about all these reports, general period. I mean, you know, by the time I make sets and, you know, I could be using reams of paper.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Ms. Kroll,
Yes.
how you have this here on the revenue report, we have the last column is the percentage of the total amount collected.
Yes.
Would it be possible to add a similar column on the expense report that shows the percent spent of the annual amount?
I've asked for that, and I'll see if they can customize. These are like canned reports, and that's pretty much standard. But I have asked them if they could include that, so they'll have to do a custom report, because this is just the way the system is set up. But I agree, I mean, if not, then I'll just add it myself. Because my intent is just to give you a summary by department and where they are according to the target, the 33% target, for example. Of course, next month when we do May, it'll be a different target, it'll be 5/12.
In the system that we have, is it possible to generate comma separated volume or to spreadsheets? Comma separated
Is
volume, that's for a CSV file, it's commonly used in spreadsheets.
I know the CSV Unlimited you're talking about.
Yes, is it possible to provide that as well?
I'll have to see, I mean, for what reason would you want that versus,
Because then we could run our own calculations
I
and
see.
see how things are.
I'll see, but like I
highlight
say,
things.
these are canned system reports,
Mhm.
so they're not, you know, we can't just print, we maybe can export them in Excel or whatever.
Yeah,
But I would.
I think it'd just be a checkbox and it would be print
It
or
would be good,
export.
yeah, if they can, but I'll see, okay?
Mr. Carl, turning to, I know you said in the next few days you'll be amending the appropriations. How are you, what are you looking at in terms of amending? How are you making the cuts between you and the administration?
Well, the first thing that I'm using to factor is already decisions and legislation such as the waste management, the health insurance, you know, we're just getting our arms around that to see what those numbers, and then of course with the mayor making decisions about what changes he would like to make, which if he wants to speak to those, we will be meeting to, you know, to see what other changes. But those are some of the things, and if the red light camera, for example, is approved, you know, those kinds of things, to get some sense of what the projected income may be.
Now, I know that in the past you had mentioned about identifying when it's time for doing contracts with different vendors and so forth and services, seeing if there's opportunities for us to reduce costs. Are there any possibilities coming forward with that?
I've been working on that, and like I say, time permitting, I plan to call the vendors. I have talked with some of the vendors, and, you know, we have looked at costs. And so, you know, I mean, I'm looking at like the IT contracts and copiers and all of that. Of course, you know, it's something that takes a little time to do, and it may not all come together this year. You may see more the advantage next year, because right now, I'm working on 2 budgets, 3 audits. So, and it's all within the same window of time this month. So it's a lot of time commitments.
What about identifying possible opportunities to share vendors or with other municipalities, whether it's supplies or gasoline or whatever? What about share anything like that sorts?
Like I said, I haven't personally contacted other municipalities, and I have to work with the mayor on that to see in terms of, you know, we have the COG that's coming up, the dispatchers, but like I say, that may not benefit us to next year. But I mean, there are some shared service that I know that we have endeavored to participate. So what others, I mean, there's, you know, we can share IT and different stuff like that, but like I say, I haven't had the time to call the cities. Plus I need to see, and if you have some ideas, you know, send them to me. In terms of what you think would be a good prospect for sharing.
Mr. Adams?
Thank you. The union contracts, are you asking, or are you, concessions, healthcare, and so forth, to bring it into the budget, or bring down the deficit?
Actually, the union contracts sort of, I mean, I've sat in on a couple of meetings, but I'm not, you know, the staff person on the union contracts. I think the mayor could probably better answer that, or the respective chiefs could answer, because I think they're more involved with the reps and the attorney and in terms of what they would like to do there. So maybe the mayor could answer it.
Mr. Chairman?
Mayor, would you like to respond?
We've already asked for concessions early this year of the unions. We recently asked again, and the ones we did ask, they laughed at us, said that they gave furlough days a couple of years ago, and they said if they had to take a pay cut, would we want more work out of them? And I was also told that if we laid off, they would take us to file an injunction. So I think you can see the negative tone and where it goes with the union employees, that they don't want to give anything back. The ones that we best, which is almost all of them. Does that answer your question?
Mr. Jackson, you had a question?
Well, I think he answered. I was gonna ask him specifically which ones, but then he said all of them.
Pretty much. You know, Mr. Chairman, we know that with the dispatchers, with the dispatch center, that sometime will be happening, hopefully before we all retire, that, you know, we're seeing that they know that they're gonna have to apply for a new job if they want the job as a dispatcher. And we really haven't had much discussion with them. But for the most part, the unions are always in a position where they're going to, you know, want what they want. So.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, what kind of presentation did we come to them? Was it simply a request for concessions of any size, shape, or color? I mean, what was our presentation that we brought forth to them?
We've had sit-down meetings with them on the health insurance. When, as you remember, Councilman, when you passed the new health insurance plan with the non-union employees, we took that bill to them, and they didn't seem too receptive of it. Now, what happened when they took that back to their individual members, because we took it to their leadership, we only heard through the grapevine that they were not happy with that. As far as concessions, we asked for a 10%, which was the starting point, was fair. And that's when we got the response of, we did this a couple years ago, we took a furlough day, one furlough day a month, and we're not gonna do that again. So it's been ongoing. There is a meeting tomorrow morning, I believe, with the police union. So as these meetings are scheduled and they are happening, these concessions will still be brought up again to see if there's any change of heart.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
what was your response when, as you put it, they laughed at you?
I didn't respond to them directly. I've been told by the legal counsel not to appear at their negotiations or meetings. So the response was to the directors and the legal counsel, and I really don't know how they responded back to them.
And who was representing the city in these meetings?
Esposito, or Mike Esposito, our new legal counsel.
Ms. Crow, could you update us on the timetable for this, the plan that's going to go before the audit? I mean, the state audit, yeah. You gave this revised one to us a few weeks ago.
Right, basically, through May 30th, which we're working on, I had to sort of sidestep that because of the staffing issue. Also, we had to, a couple of weeks sort of down with the computers when they installed those. So we're just getting those back up and running. And then in the meantime, I've been working with the state auditor, working with 3 auditors, the state auditors, the gap auditors, and the external auditors. So they sort of come when they want to come, you know? They don't ask. I mean, like this morning when I got into my office, they were waiting for me. So, you know, you have to go and work with them. But as far as I'm concerned, I plan to adhere to the schedule too. I mean, I know we'll live off the May 30th date, but like I say, in the next few days or so.
When do you think you'll have the amended appropriations for 2014 to council?
I won't give you a date, but it'll be soon. Like I say, tomorrow morning, one of the first thing I have to do is to get some stuff together for the auditors from the state, because they left today. You know, a lot of things going on. So right now, the whole, as when this schedule was prepared, I had 2.5 staff persons working, so you all know about that. And of course, we didn't have the computer problems, so all of that sort of set back. But we expect to sort of catch up and get on target.
And with regards to the financial forecast plan, because you know there was having this plan put together in June, having the council review it, having passage, and that we want to have a 30-day window before that deadline in August, so that if there's any things that need to be adjusted, that we have the opportunity to do so in August.
And we're still on target. As I mentioned, that is a function of the revised 2014 budget and the tax budget. Okay, so those two will roll into that forecast. So once those two are done, we're halfway there. So that was just be a matter.
So do you think you would have that ready for the next finance committee meeting?
I think we're scheduled to have that done by the end of June, was it? Like I said, we'll be on target with those, okay? The next meeting is before the end of June. So it may or may not. I mean, like I say, I think we're planning to have it reviewed at the very end of the month or the first part of July for those. So we'll have them.
Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Jackson?
To Ms. Kroll and maybe to the mayor. On the state plan that you're working on, there's going to be some cuts, adjustments, whatever, to come up with the numbers that you think that the state would approve. In a way, it sounds like that you're going to do that and then give it to council for council's approval. Has any thought been given to having council in those meetings talking about what may have to be cut, so that when that plan comes, that then it won't be a time that we'll have to go over that to approve or disapprove it, that it will be more in line with what everybody kind of see or have agreed upon in those type meetings?
I think that's why the schedule was laid out the way, so that we would have time to discuss it, versus just saying we approve it in June, so that we would not butt up against that August date. So, I mean, I don't have dates, but I mean, that was the plan, that we will come together to go over it, and whatever input you had, if you need to go back to the drawing board and what have you. But I mean, we will do that. I just don't have a date for it this time. That's my plan. That's the way everything's all right.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chair, you did receive my kind of preliminary list of things that I was thinking about.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions?
Mr. Chair, not for her, but for you as chairman of the committee.
Yes.
So I want to make sure that everybody's have all their questions answered, Ms. Kroll first.
Mr. Chair.
Questions? Yes, Mr. Brownlee?
When will we be seeing the tax budget for 2015? Since that needs to be sent to the county, I believe, middle of next month.
Yes, it's due July the 15th to the county. And on the schedule, we have a schedule that you would get this month, probably toward, after we finish the revised budget.
So we have things kind of stacking up here.
Well, they were stacked up before we started. I mean, they were stacked before we started, because these are dates that's preset, prescribed, they're not arbitrary dates. So the county date for even the budget next year is already set. And so the gap audit and those things has come. The state, they come when they want to come, you know, they don't set appointments. So I can't say when they will be in, but, you know, we're working on, like I say, the 3 audits as well as the budgets. So, yeah, they were stacked even before we got started.
So I see 3 documents. We need to amend appropriations, the 2015 tax budget, as well as the recovery plan.
Correct.
So we only have 2 months in which all of those things need to happen. 2 of them need to happen in a month. So would you be able to revise this so we had a good expectation of when we'll see these documents, and maybe in what order, or how we can contribute to getting these things through on time?
That was my intent, unless you have something you want to offer to the schedule, but I don't have anything I want to revise. As I stated, you know, the May 30th date, which was this past weekend, we missed that date. But, you know, the only thing that will impact those dates are the auditors. When they come, we have to be available. And what that means, then I have to do weekends like I did this weekend, and evenings. But our intent is to stay on schedule.
So we will be staying on schedule. How are we going to get back on schedule? Because we're already off. That's kind of
Okay,
my
I think I
question.
stated that hopefully this week we will be back on schedule. I work evenings, weekends, whatever.
Mhm.
Okay.
So we need to be prepared for some special meetings?
Yes, I think that was stated, that was the intent of this, and that was the reason I gave this schedule, so you could see what was coming along and how you may need to prepare your schedule.
Are there any more questions?
Well, we're gonna have to move and have special meetings for everybody. Our meetings is waiting for the plan. What is gonna happen? How much are we in the hole? How are we gonna make it? How are we gonna bounce the budget? What's gonna be cut?
Right.
What's gonna be stayed?
Is there going to be any discussion, as to possibly putting on another levy, either property tax or income tax, or at one time we talked about the income tax credit? And we never really revisited that, the credit reduction. You know, if council wants to try to see if we can put this on as a joint effort this time, maybe?
It's going to be a consensus of the council.
People are gonna obviously be seeing the cuts, and they're gonna start feeling it because they could see it visually right now, just with the, grass maintenance and other things around the city. So I think that, if they thought we were playing, we're not playing.
I think it's something that the council has to decide in terms of whether we want to go for property tax or income tax, and which one we want to go for. Because we have until, I think, August to get something on the ballot for November. There has to be a consensus of the council, what we want to do, and we want to put forth the legislation. Yes, Mr. Adams?
We can't, I don't think we can discuss it till we see the legislation. I mean, a proposal has to come to us, and the mayor, Irene, John, somebody has to get the, if you're gonna do it, you have to get the legislation to us to give us time to look it over, because Bill might want 3 readings. So we're gonna have to figure, we gotta put 3 readings in there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just one correction, Mr. Adams, Councilman Adams. You can make a proposal. Any council member can, a group, any one council president. It doesn't necessarily have to come from myself or Irene. It can come from anyone by themselves or a group. It's all open, it's wide open.
Now, thank you, Mayor. So, Mayor's more or less saying council to discuss.
No, I'm just saying anyone has a suggestion,
Oh,
the suggestion box for any kind of property, income, tax credits, wide open.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Rowling?
If I caught what Mr. Adams is saying, I think it agrees with what I'm thinking. that we need to be seeing a plan, more numbers of where we stand, where we need to be, what will get us there before we can have further discussion of how we're going to address it, whether it be an income tax, property tax, or just cutting things. We need to see where we are, where we need to be prior to having that discussion. So I think there needs to be, we need to be seeing these reports, these plans, so that we can make an informed decision on what's best for our city.
Well, agreed, but we also, if we do want to put something on the November ballot, I mean, that's something that we need to at least be thinking about in the back of our heads, because if we have to do it on 3 readings, and we only have until what, August, we're gonna need to move on that too.
Sounds like that's
There's
the
some stuff that we didn't really.
word of the day,
in
move.
past.
Yes, Mr. Adams.
And Bill, address Bill, you're right, because we gotta know where we at today. If we go for 100% tax credit, what's that gonna bring in? If we go for another try at the city income tax, you know, we already said that's $1.8 million. So where are we today for, like Bill said, where are we now that we need this much to balance the budget? With all the layoffs, cuts, and so forth, we gotta be brought up to date. But where are we at right now? And how much we're gonna need?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, there's 2 schools of thought. First of all, what we're trying to do is balance the 2014 budget. Even beyond that, we still have last year to deal with, so we still need to be trying to raise money regardless of where we are now. We need to deal with that. And then secondly, we need to start a contingency fund, because, you know, we need to try to, say, borrow money or anything like that. We need a reserve so that if such a downturn comes, you know, they'd like for us to have like 10%. So even without any of that, of knowing where you are, there's a number that you know that we need, that we could use. Is like $3 million. I mean, we need money to clear out last year. This year's budget would not do that. We would not be able to revise the budget enough to balance it for this year and clear out what we came into the year. So that's one thing that you can work on, because you automatically know you need that. And then we need like a 10% at least contingency fund, at least start working on that. So we'll have a savings in case some catastrophe came along. So I'm just saying that we need, even with a balanced budget, we still need about $3 million or so to set up a contingency fund and to take care of last year. So that's something that does not necessarily have to wait for the plan, because I think we all do know that there's not going to be enough surplus to accomplish those 2 goals.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
Right, but
How
I'm
much
just
money
saying,
you was looking for.
right, but even if we balance the budget, we
Yeah.
still need to deal with that, which does not preclude this group, this body from starting working on some ideas, as you mentioned, for the levy or whatever your plans are. So you can still move on those ideas in terms of additional
All of
dollars.
that, even trying to balance this year's budget with the deficit we still have from last year, even if we're never gonna even make a status quo, then how do we regain everything that we've lost already? All the employees, and we can balance the budget, but we still have 1 person in the building department. Whoa, we balanced the budget, that's not gonna help the city. I mean, how do we have some type of a plan to bring back and restore 6 more fire department people and bring back our building department, at least so we have a functioning city to provide the services that people demand, if they're not there.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Jackson.
I think it should have been obvious to everybody. The first part of this year, when we first saw the numbers, that we were gonna need more money. The cuts alone was not gonna make it, and especially not to pay off the deficit that we had. So I don't like the word tax, and nobody else does. But unless we want a city that's basically a ghost town, revenue is gonna have to be increased some way, shape, or form. And again, to wait until, I'll say the last minute, to try to put together something that will possibly be on a ballot, to me is a disservice to the city. We need to be having these meetings now and talking about all different kind of ways and different things and combination of taxes that will generate millions of dollars over the next few years. I mean, it's just no getting around that. So why not start looking at all the different scenarios on raising the income? We don't need to have those numbers. We know we got $1.9 million from last year that we gotta pay off, so we gotta try to at least raise that over the next couple of years, plus a contingency or rainy day fund. We can do that now. We don't need to wait.